Words of my mouth, the meditation of each and every one of our hearts here today will please God, who is our rock and our redeemer. I don't think that people can truly understand the meaning of the word tenacious or tenacity until they understand the bulldog. You know what type of dog I mean. They're kind of the short little things with front feet out like this and underbite like this. You know, they look kind of silly almost. I don't really think of them very much, but they've got the big upper body and the real small hindquarters. Do you know what a bulldog is bred for? Most people don't. But do you know where the name bulldog comes from? Bulldogs were bred to kill bulls. Okay? I know. You look at these little things, you think, oh, how cute. Pit bulls are a descendant of a bulldog. That bite that the pit bulls are so well known for comes from their ancestor, the bulldog. You see, what a bulldog would do to kill a bull is that he would go up to the bull, and as the bull was trying to gore him with his horns, the bulldog would latch his jaws onto the nose, the most sensitive part of the bull, would latch his jaws onto the nose of the bull with a crushing bite that would close off the bull's windpipe. It would close down his nostrils, and he would cling with such tenacity, such ferocious aggression, that no matter what the bull would do, no matter how that bulldog was thrashed around, thrown around, slammed to the ground, hit on the horns of the bull, he would hold on. The bulldog, would oftentimes end up with broken bones, a broken back, or even have his teeth ripped out of his mouth. But he would not let go of that bull. They were oftentimes killed by the bull, or the bull was killed by the dog. That's tenacity. They were bred with that smaller hindquarters to minimize the breaking of the back. As the bull was thrashing around trying to get the dog off, there would be less weight in the back to cause the vertebrae to break. A bulldog has tenacity. A bulldog has commitment, if you want to call it that, to their cause, and will not let go. That is the picture of tenacity I want you to have in your mind as we talk about today's passage. Parents need an element of tenacity. Am I right? Yes. Right? Parents need some tenacity. Because sometimes we feel like that bulldog hanging on to our children's lives, trying to guide them, trying to steer them, and they feel like that bull doing everything in their power to shake us off of them, to choose their own path foolishly or dangerously or self-defeatingly, and we as their parents are trying to direct them. We need some tenacity to hold on as our lives feel like they're being slammed on the ground or thrown in the air. We need tenacity as parents to continue to work with our children, to love them, and sometimes in painful ways. But we need tenacity as parents to raise our children. That commitment, that no quitting attitude on our children. What about adoptive parents? Adoptive parents, I think, need an extra dose, if anything, of this tenacity. When a parent adopts a child, they are in essence saying, I am now a bulldog in your life, and I will not let go of you. You are my child. You are my child every bit as much as if you were born to me or born to my wife. You are my child, and I will cling to you as your parent with the tenacity of a bulldog. I think they need a special dose of tenacity because they face extra difficulty. Sometimes children who are adopted, I mean, think about it from their perspective. They have biological parents who gave them up. And that causes emotional difficulty in their life. They say to themselves, if my own biological parents gave me up, surely these parents, so-called parents, who now have legal right to the title of my parents, surely they would give me up. And if it was something that I did, which oftentimes adopted children will assume, wrongly, without basis, but assume it or fear it, they will say, if I did something that my parents gave me up, then surely if I do something these parents will give me up. And they will test adoptive parents to see if this theory is correct. And they will act out, and they will rebel, and they will do everything in their power to make sure that their parents don't want or will not give them up. To make sure that their parents really are these bulldogs who won't let go of them. Because deep down, that is their greatest fear. Their parents gave them up. Why not my adoptive parents? Are you really a bulldog? Is what they're asking when they act out. Think about Joseph. We've been looking at Joseph as the adoptive father of Jesus. Think about the extra challenges that he faced. Last week, we mentioned a couple. We mentioned the fact that Joseph was going to take on a reputation for himself. Now, this was a challenge for himself. Is he going to have the tenacity to stick to raising Jesus, even though he's going to have this reputation? And the answer we talked about last week was yes. But think about the extra challenges that he faces. Joseph, first of all, has to take his pregnant wife to Bethlehem on a long journey. I say that's not a terrible big deal. I don't know how many of you have ever traveled long distance with a pregnant woman, but it's a challenge, right? Okay, so that's a little challenge. But now, Joseph, who says, I will adopt Jesus. I will be the bulldog in Jesus' life. I will be his father. I will not abandon him. I will have tenacity in his life. Now, the next thing that happens in Joseph's life is he gets a messenger, a telegraph from God that says, oh, by the way, Joseph, you're going to have to not go back to your hometown. You're going to have to not go back to your family. You have to leave, say goodbye to all of your family, the rest of your family. Are you tenacious enough to do that, Joseph? Are you going to give up your parents, your siblings, your nieces, your nephews, your aunts, your uncles, and your grandparents to go to Egypt? Joseph says, yes, I am Jesus' father. I will do that. The angel says, you're going to Egypt. By the way, that's a foreign land. You don't speak the language there. How many of us would be willing to take our adopted child to a foreign land where we didn't know the language? How many of us would be willing to eat the foreign food? Right? That strange food that they cook over there. Joseph wasn't used to it. He didn't know the language. He wasn't used to the food. Oh, by the way, Joseph, I know all that hard work that you've done to build up your business. You can kiss that goodbye. Your client base, they're gone because you're going to a new place where you don't know anybody and you don't speak the language. Guess what? It's going to be twice as hard to build up your client base there. Your business, out the window. How many of us would be willing to give up our income to be tenacious with a child that we have adopted? Or a child that's our own biologically. Joseph did this. Joseph willingly gave it up. Now, that was for a couple of years. Joseph had no idea how long that would be. Joseph willingly obeys God's command, goes to Egypt, goes to the foreign land, learns a little bit of the foreign language, starts to build up a little business, kind of gets a taste for the local cuisine, can figure out what he can eat, what he can't eat. And he gets another message from God. Oh, Joseph, now that you've settled in, it's time to move again. You know that client base that you built up here? You know the second business that you built as a carpenter? You can kiss that one goodbye too. If Joseph had any personal ambition whatsoever, at this point, he would be ready to curse God. Because he has just given up building of his business twice. And who knows how many more messengers he's got coming. But not only does he give up his business, not only does he have to learn a foreign language, not only does he have to learn a foreign culture, learn how to eat foreign food, move away from his family, move back to his family, not only does he have to pick up and move his entire household, but he also has to learn to trust God. How many of us would have responded to a dream about an angel coming to tell us, oh, by the way, you should leave York County and go to Mexico? Says the angel in our dream, and the next morning wake up, roll over and say, honey, guess what? We need to move. You know? How many would say, okay, last night you had a dream, an angel appeared. How many would move to Mexico today? And by the way, my hand is not up. I'm just sure. Yeah, you know? I would say, wait a second, that was a terrible dream. And I would try to go back to sleep and hope for another angel that said Hawaii or someplace like that, right? Joseph did not do that. Joseph had to learn to trust in God. To trust in God to provide in a place of unfamiliarity, in a culture not his own. And he did it. Why? Because he was a bulldog. He was latched on to his adoptive son and his wife, unwilling to give them up no matter what. They had to leave to keep Jesus safe, so he had to leave to keep Jesus safe. That's tenacity. I had Brian read from Ruth for you today because in that story we see the tenacity of an adopted daughter. We're talking about adoption, and we see Ruth, who is adopted by Naomi. I say adopted, she was the daughter-in-law, but her husband was dead. So in a sense, she was an adopted daughter of Naomi. Now, think about what Naomi had to offer Ruth. Naomi was a widow who had no children and was too old to bear sons. Ruth was a widow, had married Naomi's son, who had died. First of all, these guys have terrible health records, right? Their constitution is awful. So, what does Naomi have to offer Ruth? In the culture of the day, when a brother died without an heir, it was up to his brother to provide an heir for him. So for Ruth, she had to marry Naomi's other son. The only problem was, he was also dead. So what we've got is Ruth has to marry one of Naomi's sons, but Naomi doesn't have a son and she's too old to conceive. Even if she wasn't, think about how long it would take. Naomi says it, if I were married tonight and conceived, would you wait until my son was old enough to marry you? Would you wait all those years and decades until he grew up? Naomi says, no, go back. She releases her daughter. She releases both of them. She says, go back to your people. Go back. And God, I pray that God will give you a husband from your own tribes, from your own towns, from your own village. I pray that God will bless you. I can't do anything for you. And Orpah goes back. And you know what? That's the last thing we ever hear of Orpah in the Bible. We never hear about her again. But Ruth says no. She clings to Naomi. She says to Naomi, I know that you have nothing to offer me. I know that I will probably die a widow, without a child, without an heir, penniless and destitute. I know all this, but you are my mother, and I am your daughter. And if that's the case, so be it, because I am committed to you. You are my mom. That's tenacity. And it's very interesting. If you continue on, you read, what was Naomi's hometown? Brian? Naomi, not Ruth. Bethlehem. They went back to Bethlehem, right? Around Christmas time, Bethlehem gets a lot of attention. And yes, Ruth marries one of Naomi's cousins and has a child who becomes the king David, who killed Goliath. Ruth becomes The